For a helicopter pilot, low stress handling really means that we work the cattle slowly and calmly and take them steady. Some breeds of cattle need to go slower than others. As soon as they do the right thing, we fly away. And then so that the mental demand's gone and the physical demand's gone. That's their reward. So it's kind of pressure on, pressure off. So we create pressure when they're not doing the right thing, and when they're doing the right thing, there's no pressure. So they learn to search for what we want them to do. I think if we can keep the cattle calm and keep them steady, and the ground crew does the same thing, helicopter mustering is very easy and it doesn't become a dangerous job. Most of our, probably 90–95% of our mustering is done at 500 to 600 feet and at a rate probably 50 or 60 knots, which is quite safe. Everyone works together trying to get the cattle and the animals as good as we can so that it is safe and we can fly at those heights and at those speeds, and you're not near trees, you're not down on the ground chasing them around. When I started, I was kind of taught that you had to fly hard, and if you could turn a helicopter inside out, you're a good pilot. And that the culture of that whole thing has changed to becoming a good cattle person and flying around being safe and steady, and that's what's seen as being a great pilot. The ground crew for a mustering pilot plays a just as important role as what a good helicopter pilot does. A good helicopter pilot can be a very good cattleman, and he can do the right thing by the animals to where he's going to take them. But if they're delivered to people that are going to mistreat them some way, those cattle will not be the same next time. That's why we all have to work together. The ground crew has to treat them properly. Because we might do 3 or 4 jobs a day, I've got to be able to tell my clients that I'll be here at 8 or they're at 10 because I know how much time it's going to take to do that paddock. What happens in our industry is if there's a change of ground crew to that property, that paddock might have taken me 3 hours for the last 10 years. If that ground crew changes and those people mistreat those cattle in some way from where I've taken them to, those cattle then, the next time I muster them, could take me 4 hours, and then it'll take 5 hours. And you can end up being cattle that used to take you 3 hours and have no trouble at all to where you're there 5 and 6 hours just because the ground crew has changed and changed the mental conditioning of those animals not to want to go where you want to take them. So they're the things that make our industry more dangerous. Different herds have their own culture by the way they've been conditioned, by the way they've been worked, and you can go from property to property. It could be even next door property. Those animals can be very, very hard to handle. And any animal that gets in with those animals will then change mentally just by running with them, because as soon as they hear a helicopter run past, they will go and hide. So then that gets passed on to the younger animals, and then that stays in that culture of those cattle, for a long time until you get rid of those. So once they're mentally scarred, it's pretty much locked in and it'll stay like that. Probably some of the most valuable lessons I've learnt helicopter mustering is when I take off, I just think power lines. As soon as my skids leave the ground, I think power lines. If I get to power line height, I get nervous. There's a lot of frights. As you get older, you get less. But when you're first starting, you get a lot of frights, and you always check your fuel. That's the things you can look after. The ground crew have got to be educated around the helicopters. That's a big thing, is people around your helicopter. And when you get in the helicopters, you only think about what you're doing, not something else. I think the biggest advice I could give, to sit in with someone for as long as you can. Don't be in a hurry to get out and go by yourself. To be a mustering pilot, to go with someone with a lot of cattle sense, to teach you how cattle think and how you work them, will save you a lot of hard flying and a lot of being put in situations where it's going to be difficult for you. I'd be in no hurry to go out on your own, and the more time you can spend in with someone with a lot of experience, I think the safer you're going to be. If you send someone to where the cattle are bad and the cattle don't have any respect or been ruined by motorbikes or other helicopters, that's what you don't want a young pilot to be going and doing. It's too dangerous. For instance, there's some jobs that you're not going to be able to yard those cattle with a helicopter. They're not going to be yarded. So a young pilot might not understand that and try harder and push things more, and the experience of knowing that you've got to fly away. The best thing you can tell a young fella is just when you beat, and just let them go. I think sometimes when we're young, our egos kick in and we want to get every beast and we want to make sure we don't leave any behind, and I think that's where we can come unstuck. Good helicopter pilots are always trying to keep the cattle mentally in a position where they're thinking, not hot or not stressed, or because they shut you out then they won't comply. It's very difficult when you start because you're trying to fly the helicopter and you're trying to figure out the cattle of where you need to be and try and get. That's where I guess it's the most dangerous. That's why I said before to stay in with someone for as long as you can, so that you can handle the helicopter and handle the cattle before you actually go and start working, because there's no bigger pressure to be sent to a job for the first time and the manager hops in with you or the owner and says, we're going to go and do this paddock here. That's a lot of pressure for a young pilot, because it's the pressure of going to do a job and being paid, so you don't want to be messing up. When I first started 20 years ago, there were a lot more places that were gun-ho and not set up for helicopters, and the whole culture was how you could fly and throw a helicopter around, and then we soon worked out that we couldn't outfly them. We had to try and outthink them and handle them better, and that culture is now in the helicopter mustering industry, where the slower you go and the more efficient you are, that's a good pilot.